Write the story now, applying all the analyzed patterns. Let me first verify the band names list carefully. The band names include Claire, Daniel, Patricia, Marcus, Ryan, Becca, Donna, Nora, Trevor, Gina, Lena, Walt, Judy, Seb, Ivy, Hazel, Audrey, Sterling, Callie, Elliot, Phoebe, Owen, Renata, Cora, Lee, Tate, Brinna, Flora, Rinna, Theo, Gail, Gain, Brinna, Flora, Joel, Nadia, Evie, Sandra, Melissa, Derek, Roland, Kieran, Edmund, Miles, Garrett, Liz, Josie, Sloan, Judge Parrish, Petra, Blythe, Serena, Callum, Warren, Pat, Tessa, Hugh, Finn, Harper, Kevin, Donnie, Paige, Cody, Simone, Deborah, Sarah, Oliver, Wade, Harriet, Jenna, Archer, Declan, Britton, Vivian, Rhett, Cole, Iris, Landon, Cecily, Meredith, Zara, Maya, Cassidy, Dominic, Poppy, Christy, June, Nate, Tamsin, Nadine, Clifford, Brody, Willa, Dara, Terrence, Mady, Eli, Brooke, Corbin, Beatrix, Kirsten, Wyeth, Cassidy, Annalise, Reef, Tamara, Angela, Noel, Rowan, Priya, Aldrich, Felix, Daphne, Bex, Nessa, Laurel, Vivith, George, Bennett. I'll use Maren, narrator, Colton, golden brother, Shepherd Vale, mysterious figure, and supporting names not on the list. The first thing I noticed when I came to wasn't pain. It was the smell, antiseptic and recycled air, and something faintly floral that turned out to be a get-well bouquet on the windowsill. Not from my family, as it turned out, but from my coworkers at the firm who heard before my own mother did. I know that because my mother told me herself 2 weeks later at my kitchen table while she was explaining why what she did wasn't wrong. She said, "We didn't even know it was serious." I said, "I was on a ventilator for 6 hours." She looked at the wall like the wall had said something rude. "Her name is in the visitor log exactly once, 41 minutes, on day 3. My stepfather doesn't appear at all. My brother, I'll get to him, signed in on day 5, stayed long enough to eat the hospital pudding on my tray, and left. The nurses noticed. They notice everything, which is something I didn't understand until a woman named Rosalind, my night nurse for most of those 12 days, described the other visitor to me. The one who came every night. The one whose name made my mother go very, very quiet. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's the end. Let me start from the part that explains why it happened at all. My name is Maren. I'm 32 years old. I work in medical billing, the part of healthcare that no one wants to think about until they're drowning in it. I'm good at it. I understand numbers, insurance codes, appeals processes, the specific language you use to get a claim approved versus the language that gets it denied. It is not glamorous work. It does not come with a lot of praise. But for the past 7 years, it has paid my rent, my car note, and, for a significant stretch of time I try not to think about too hard, a substantial portion of my family's life. We grew up in a small city in central Ohio. My mother remarried when I was 12. My stepfather is the kind of man who has a lot of opinions about what other people should do and very few about what he himself should be doing. My brother, my half-brother, technically, though we never used that word, is 4 years younger than me and has been the center of the family's gravitational pull since the day he arrived. His name is Beckett. I say that plainly because I want you to picture him correctly, sandy-haired, easy smile, the kind of charm that reads as warmth until you notice it only ever costs him nothing. He wanted to be a musician. Not the practicing in a garage kind, the kind who posts acoustic covers online and waits for the world to recognize his inevitability. He had, by the time I turned 30, released 1 EP, played 40-something shows at venues that were essentially large living rooms, and accumulated a very dedicated following of about 2,000 people, most of whom were related to us or had gone to our high school. My mother called this building his brand. I called it my Saturday afternoons, driving him to gigs 4 hours away because he'd lost his license after his second DUI and couldn't afford the ride. The requests started small. They always do, I think. I've heard enough versions of this story since to know it follows a pattern. Can you help with the electric? Just until your father's check clears, just until Beckett's next show, just until things settled down. Things did not settle down. They expanded. The electric became the mortgage gap, became the new guitar he needed for the Nashville trip, became the legal fees from an incident that I was told only the barest details of and asked not to mention again. I kept a spreadsheet. I am a person who keeps spreadsheets. Over 6 years, I had transferred or paid directly, in various amounts, just over $87,000 to or on behalf of my mother, my stepfather, and Beckett. That number used to feel abstract to me. It stopped feeling abstract the morning I sat in the ER waiting room trying to calculate whether I could cover my own deductible. That was 2 months before I collapsed. The collapsing happened on a Tuesday in February. I had been working 50 to 60-hour weeks since October because we were in the middle of a major payer audit and I was the only person on my team who fully understood the legacy system we were migrating off of. I had not taken a sick day in 14 months. I had been sleeping on average 5 hours a night, which sounds manageable until it isn't. I'd been getting headaches that I treated with ibuprofen and caffeine. I'd been skipping lunch most days because it was easier to eat at my desk, and the rhythm of eating at my desk had gradually compressed itself into not really eating at my desk either. My cardiologist afterward told me that what happened was a hypertensive crisis triggered by sustained physical depletion. My body, in other words, stopped accepting the conditions I had given it. I was in the middle of an email when it happened. My coworker Faye found me on the floor beside my chair. She said I was conscious but not making sense. She said I kept asking her to check something in the system. The paramedics came. There was a period of time I can't account for. I woke up in a room with machines attached to me and a window showing a gray Ohio February sky. And for a few seconds I felt completely calm because I didn't remember anything yet. Then I did. I looked around the room. My mother wasn't there. Nobody was there. The nurse who came in when she noticed I was awake told me her name was Rosalind. She had silver streaked braids and reading glasses pushed up on her head and the kind of composure that you only get from years of being the person who has to say hard things gently. She told me what had happened medically. She told me the name of my cardiologist. She told me I was going to be okay, that I was past the worst of it. Then she paused in the specific way people pause when there's something they're choosing how to say. "Your family was called," she said. "They came by yesterday." I did the math slowly. Yesterday. Yes, I've been here since Tuesday. It was Thursday. Rosalind looked at me with the expression of someone who has seen this exact moment too many times. They stayed about 45 minutes. Your mother said she had prior commitments she couldn't rearrange. Prior commitments. I let that sit. I looked at the ceiling. The ceiling was the standard hospital white, the kind that seems designed to give you nothing to look at so you have no choice but to be alone with what you're thinking. "Did they say anything else?" I asked. "About me, I mean, not the logistics." Rosalind's pause was longer this time. "Your brother asked if you'd be back to work soon." I nodded, like that made sense. It did make sense. That was the part that was so hard to explain to people later. It wasn't a surprise. It was a confirmation. There's a specific grief that comes not from being shocked, but from having the thing you feared most turn out to be exactly as true as you suspected. "Okay," I said. My voice came out even, which surprised me. "Thank you." Rosalind adjusted something on my IV line. She didn't leave right away. "You've had one other visitor," she said carefully. "He's not family. He didn't ask to come in. Actually, he specifically asked not to disturb you. He just wanted to know you were being cared for." She hesitated. "He's been coming back?" I looked at her. "Who?" She shook her head gently. "I think that's his to tell. But I wanted you to know someone's been here. I didn't know what to do with that. I filed it somewhere and went to sleep." My phone came back to me on day 4. The notifications took a while to load. My mother had texted twice, "Call me when you can," and 6 hours later, "We're going to visit your aunt this weekend. Hope you're feeling better." My stepfather hadn't texted at all. Beckett had sent a voice memo that turned out to be 30 seconds of ambient noise, a bar maybe, or a venue, followed by him saying, "Oh, wrong thread," and hanging up. There was also a text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "I heard what happened. I'm sorry I wasn't closer when it did. I hope you're resting." I stared at that for a long time. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure I had the capacity to open anything new. On day 6, I saw him. I had been cleared to walk short distances, which I did slowly with a grip on the IV pole, making loops of the corridor outside my room at the times of day when it was quietest. It was late, past 9, and the floor was dim and mostly empty. There was a man sitting in one of the chairs at the end of the hall. Not waiting room posture, not impatient posture. The kind of still that comes from someone who is actually, genuinely prepared to remain where they are for as long as they need to. He looked up when I came around the corner. He was older, mid to late 50s, I thought, though something about him made that hard to pin down, gray at the temples. A jacket that had been nice once, but had been used too much to be nice anymore. He looked at me like he was confirming something to himself. He stood up, not quickly, carefully, like he was trying not to alarm me. "Maren," he said. I stopped. "Do I know you?" He let out a breath. "No, not really, not yet." He paused. "My name is Hugh," and then he stalked himself like he'd said something that surprised even him. He started again. "My name is, people call me Hale. Hale." "He texted me," I said. "Yes. How did you get my number?" "Your co-worker, Faye. She tracked down anyone she could think of." He paused. "I don't think she knew what she was doing when she called me. I don't think she knew who I was doing when she called me. I don't think she knew who I was. She just had a list and she was working through it." I looked at him. "Who are you?" He looked at me with the expression of someone trying to figure out how much truth a person can absorb at one time. "Someone who should have found a way to know you better a long time ago." I didn't push. I was too tired to push. I turned around and walked back to my room, and I didn't look behind me to see if he was still there. But in the morning, Rosalind mentioned, in passing, that he'd stayed until past midnight. Day 8, I asked her directly. "Hale," she said. "That's what he goes by. His full name is on the log." She looked at me over her glasses. "Whitmore. Hale Whitmore." The name didn't mean anything to me at first, and then gradually it did. Not because I knew the name, but because of where I'd heard it, in the silence around it. The way my mother would leave a room when certain subjects came up, the way she'd once, years ago, said there are things in my life before this family that I don't discuss with a finality that was really a threat. I thought about the initial H in that text. I thought about a man who drove to a hospital in February to sit in a corridor chair and ask not to be let in, just to know someone was watching. I thought about a lot of things I hadn't let myself think before. My mother arrived on day 10. I knew she was coming because she had texted the night before, "Coming by tomorrow. Let's get you sorted out and home." I was sitting up in bed when she arrived. She came in like she owned the room, which is how she enters most rooms. Shoulders back, energy forward, already talking. She'd been somewhere warm. I could tell from the color in her face. "There you are," she said. "You look better than I expected. Where did you go?" I asked. She waved a hand. "Your stepfather had a conference in Scottsdale. Beckett came with us. He wanted some time to write, and the weather there is better for him creatively. You know how he is." She set her purse down. "Now, let's talk about getting you discharged." I already spoke to someone at the desk. "The desk can't discharge me," I said. "My cardiologist makes that call." "Well, I'm sure we can speak to him." "Her." My mother looked at me. "What?" "My cardiologist is a her." Something shifted in my mother's face. A tiny recalibration. "Fine, her. The point is, you've been here long enough and you need to be home recovering, not in a hospital." "I am recovering," I said. "Here." "That's what this is." "Maren, where in Scottsdale?" I asked. She blinked. "What?" "The conference? What hotel?" "I phones." "The Phoenician." "Why?" "Just curious." I let that sit for a second. "I've been here 10 days, Mom, on a ventilator for the first 6 hours. You were gone for 8 of those days." Her expression didn't change exactly, but something around her eyes tightened. "I told you, your stepfather had obligations. And you were stable. Rosalind told me I coded once before I stabilized. The word coded did something to the room." My mother opened her mouth and closed it again. "I didn't know that," she said finally. "No," I said, "because you were in Scottsdale." She recovered. That's the thing about my mother. She's very good at recovering. Her voice shifted into the lower register she uses when she wants to sound reasonable. We didn't have accurate information. Your coworkers were very vague when they called. Faye told me she said I was in cardiac ICU, I said. That's fairly specific, Maren. I understand you're upset, but you're making this into something. Who is Hale Whitmore? The quiet that followed was different from all the other quiets in that room. It had a texture to it. My mother set her purse on the chair very carefully. She straightened up. She looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Not anger exactly, not guilt exactly. Something more cornered. Where did you hear that name? He's been here every night, I said. It's in the visitor log. She said nothing. Every night, I said again. While you were in Scottsdale. Her voice came out smaller than I had ever heard it. He had no right. No right to what? I asked. To sit in a chair outside my room? To make sure someone was here? You don't understand the history. I know, I said. Because you never told me any of it. She started to say something. The door opened. Hale stepped in. He had clearly been in the corridor, had heard the voice, maybe, or asked Rosalind for a signal. He stood near the doorway and he looked at my mother the way you look at someone you have a long and complicated history of being truthful with. Sandra, he said. My mother's face did something I can only describe as collapsing inward. All of the Scottsdale color drained out of it. You need to leave, she said. No. His voice was quiet, not combative, just sure. I don't think I do. This is my daughter. Yes, he said, and the word landed differently than it should have, and I felt something cold move through me that wasn't the room temperature. She is. My mother turned to me. Don't listen to him. He's rewriting history. He was never part of this family. Because you made sure of it, Hale said, still quiet. Because you weren't fit. Because you decided that. He looked at her steadily. And you've been deciding for 32 years. I think that's enough. My mother's voice dropped into the sharp register she uses when she's trying to cut something off. Maren, whatever he's told you, he hasn't told me anything, I said. I found his name in a log. That's it. She looked between us. I watched her calculate. He's not who you think, she said. I don't think anything yet, I said. But I'd like the chance to. My stepfather appeared in the doorway behind Hale. I hadn't heard him come. He has a way of arriving in rooms silently, which has always made me uneasy. He looked at Hale the way territorial animals look at each other. Who's this? Nobody, my mother said quickly. I'm her father, Hale said. The word hit the room like something thrown. My stepfather looked at my mother looked at the floor. I looked at Hale, who was looking at me with the expression of a man who has been carrying something for a very long time and has finally put it down in the right place. My stepfather recovered first. This is a private family matter. It is, I agreed, which is why I'm going to ask you both to step out. My mother looked up. Excuse me, I need you to leave, I said. Both of you. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk. Maren, you're not thinking clearly. I have a cardiologist who will tell you I'm thinking clearly enough to make my own decisions. I reached for the call button and held it. And if I press this, Rosalind will come in, and she's very good at asking people to leave. The silence stretched. My mother picked up her purse. Her jaw was set in the way it gets when she's decided that the dignified exit is her only remaining option. We'll talk about this later. Yes, I said, we will. She left. My stepfather followed without looking at me. When the door swung closed, the room felt like it did after a storm, the same space but rearranged by something that had moved through it. Hale was still by the door. He hadn't moved toward me. He seemed committed to taking up only the space I offered him. How long have you known? I asked. About you. He exhaled. I've known you existed since before you were born. Your mother and I were. He paused. It's complicated. It was complicated. I handled part of it badly, and she handled part of it badly, and by the time anyone got clear about who owed what to whom, you were 2 years old and she had remarried, and she had made it very plain that I was not welcome to complicate her life. So you just didn't. I tried. A few times. She was persistent in her position. He looked at his hands. I should have been more persistent. That's what I've thought about for 30 years, that I should have pushed harder. He looked up at me. I found out you were here from Faye, the same as I said. I almost didn't come. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 40 minutes talking myself into it. He almost smiled. Then I came in and they said you weren't ready for visitors and I couldn't leave, so I didn't. I thought about a man in a parking garage in February arguing with himself. You paid my bill, I said. He shook his head slightly. The least I could do. It's not a small amount. I know. It doesn't come close to making anything even. I know that too. He looked at me steadily. I'm not trying to buy anything. I want to be very clear about that. I didn't come here to make you feel obligated. I came because you were alone and I couldn't live with being someone who knew that and drove home anyway. I looked at this man who had my cheekbones and my mother's silence around him like a weather pattern. I don't know how to do this, I said. Neither do I, he said. I don't have a roadmap. I have 32 years of wishing I'd been braver, he paused. But I'm here now, if you want to start. I didn't say yes. I didn't say anything for a while, but I didn't say no either, and from the way his shoulders settled slightly, he understood what that meant. My mother called 4 times over the next 2 days. I let them go to voicemail. On the 3rd day, I listened. The first message was composed. Explanations, a version of events in which she had done the reasonable thing. The second was tighter, the first cracks showing. The third was shorter. Call me back, Maren. This is getting ridiculous. The fourth, left at 11 p.m., was just her voice saying my name twice, and then a long pause, and then the line going dead. I thought about calling back. I thought about all the years I had answered, all the times I had picked up the phone and said yes, and of course, and I'll figure it out. I thought about the spreadsheet I kept in a folder on my desktop, $87,000 that I had told myself was love expressed in the only language my family seemed to understand. I opened my banking app. I removed my mother from the shared account we had maintained for emergencies, which had functioned in practice as a fund she drew from when she didn't want to ask directly. I canceled the automatic transfer that went to Beckett's phone bill every month. I changed the password on the account that had my stepfather's information saved. Then I put my phone face down on the hospital tray table and ate the entire bowl of soup they brought me for dinner, which was the first meal I'd eaten completely in longer than I could specifically remember. Rosalind came in that night for checks and found me sitting up reading. You look different, she said. I feel different. She noted something on her tablet. There's someone in the hall if you want company. I did. He came in and sat in the chair by the window, not the one beside the bed. Again, that careful attention to space. We talked for a while about small things first, where he lived, a mid-sized city 2 hours away, where he'd spent most of his adult life running a civil engineering firm that was now, mostly, being run by people he'd hired and trusted, what he'd done over the years, the ways he'd thought about reaching out, and the reasons he'd talked himself out of them. What changed? I asked. This time, when Faye called, he was quiet for a moment. I think I just ran out of reasons, he said. The reasons I've been using. Your mother will make it difficult. You don't know me. You'll resent the disruption. I've been carrying them so long that I'd stopped examining them, and when Faye called and I knew you were alone here, every single reason I had felt. He paused. Small? They all just felt very small. I looked at the window. February dark outside, my reflection floating in the glass. My whole life, I said, I've been taking care of people, and I never thought about it that way while I was doing it. I just thought I was being useful, being the responsible one. I stopped, but I think I did it because I thought if I made myself necessary enough, I'd be kept, you know. He was quiet in the way of someone who is listening and not preparing an answer. And here's the thing about that strategy, I said. It doesn't work. Being necessary is not the same as being loved. I know that now. I'm just very tired from figuring it out the hard way. Hale was quiet for a long time. You were always worth keeping, he said. For the record. It was a simple sentence. It didn't solve anything. But I'd spent so much of my life buying the affection of people who should have given it freely that I recognized real love partly by how unfamiliar it felt. Quiet and clean, and asking nothing in return. I was discharged on a Monday, 12 days after I arrived, not when my mother had planned it. When my cardiologist decided it was right, Faye picked me up. She's the kind of person who brings a car blanket and a thermos of coffee for the passenger and asks no questions until you're ready. We drove in silence for a while through a city that looked exactly the same as before, which was somehow both reassuring and strange. He was there every night, Faye said eventually. That man. I didn't know who he was when I called him. I swear, I was just going through contacts I'd found in your file from when you were onboarded. His name was listed as an emergency contact. She paused. Old paperwork. I don't think you knew he was on it. I hadn't. I thought about that. About someone filling out a form years ago and putting a name down, and that name sitting in a folder never pulled until the moment it needed to be. You did the right thing, I said. She handed me the coffee. My mother and I spoke for the first time, properly, 3 weeks after discharge. We met at a coffee shop, neutral ground, her idea. She looked like herself, and also not quite. Some of the certainty had come off her. She told me her version of the history with Hale, which was not the same as his in the details, but arrived at the same basic fact. She had made a decision when I was very young that she had not revisited since, and she had built a life in which revisiting it was not something she was willing to do. I asked her why. She said, because it was easier. It was the most honest thing I'd heard her say in years. I told her that I understood that. I also told her that I had been subsidizing her version of easy for 6 years, and I wasn't going to do that anymore. I told her about the accounts I'd closed and the transfers I'd stopped. I told her I wasn't doing it to punish her, I was doing it because I had to, because I had nearly died, making it possible for everyone around me to not have to try. She cried, which I had expected. She said it wasn't fair, which I had also expected. She said she loved me, which I believed, and which coexisted, as it often does, with the fact that love alone is not the same as treating someone well. I drove home. I made dinner for myself, a real dinner, at my own table, with the news on in the background and no texts to answer. I sat with the quiet, which felt less like loneliness than it used to, and more like something I was just getting acquainted with. Hale called that evening. He'd gotten into the habit of calling every few days, short calls mostly, checking in without pressure. We talked about what I was eating, whether I was sleeping, a book he'd mentioned that I'd actually gone and found at the library, small things, a structure being built one ordinary day at a time. How'd it go? He asked. Fine, I said. Hard. Better than I expected. That's usually how it goes. I looked out my window at the street. Ordinary and lamplit. I don't really know how to have a father, I said. I want to be upfront about that. I don't really know how to have a daughter, he said. I think we're even. We'll figure it out. I think so, he said. I'm not going anywhere. I didn't say anything for a moment. I was thinking about a man in a parking garage in February, talking himself into something he should have done years ago and finally doing it anyway. I was thinking about a chair in a hospital corridor and a name in a log and a message that said, I'm sorry I wasn't closer when it did. People talk about family like it's a fixed thing, like it's just a matter of blood and proximity and the accident of where you happen to start. But I've worked in medical billing for 7 years, and I have learned that the forms always ask for an emergency contact, and an emergency contact is not the person who shares your last name. It's the person you would want to find you, the person you trust to show up. I know now who mine is, and I know now who it isn't. That's something. After 32 years, that's actually quite a lot. I've thought a lot about the word responsible since I got out of that hospital. It was the word my mother used for me my entire life, always said like a compliment, always functioning like an assignment. You're the responsible one, and I accepted it. I built my whole identity around it. I became the person who answered the phone, transferred the money, drove the 4 hours, absorbed the cost of everyone else's choices without ever naming what I was actually doing, which was teaching the people around me that I had no limit they needed to respect. That's the part nobody tells you. When you never say no, you don't just hurt yourself. You actually do something unkind to the people you're saying yes to. You let them believe that the arrangement is normal. You let them practice taking until taking is the only thing they know how to do with you. I spent 6 years doing that for my mother, my stepfather, my brother Beckett, and I told myself it was love. But love isn't just the feeling underneath something, it's also what the thing actually does. And what I was doing was building a dynamic that required me to shrink so that everyone else could stay comfortable. The body keeps a ledger even when the mind won't. I know that now in a way I couldn't have explained before February. My hands shook for months before I collapsed. I stopped eating real meals. I stopped sleeping enough. I kept working, kept transferring money, kept answering texts at midnight, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I think I knew what was happening. I just didn't believe I was allowed to stop. That's the thing about spending years being useful to people who don't ask how you are. You start to forget that you're allowed to have a threshold. Hale sitting in that corridor chair every night is the image I come back to when I need to remember what I'm actually looking for in people. He didn't announce himself. He didn't make it about him. He simply refused to let me be alone, quietly, without making me owe him anything for it. That is a very specific kind of character, the kind that doesn't require an audience to do the right thing. I had spent 32 years surrounded by people who needed an audience. I didn't know how different it felt until I experienced the alternative. The choices I made after closing the accounts, stopping the transfers, telling my mother the truth over coffee in neutral territory, none of those were acts of cruelty. I want to be clear about that. They were acts of honesty. The cruel thing would have been to keep going, to keep performing a version of family that was costing me everything and giving me nothing sustainable in return, and to let Beckett keep believing that someone would always absorb the consequences of his choices, and to let my mother keep believing that love is something you can invoice. What I understand now, having had time to sit with it, is that integrity isn't really about the big moments. It's not about the dramatic confrontation in the hospital room or the speech you finally give. It's about the years of small decisions before that, whether you're honest about your limits, whether you let people treat you in ways you know aren't right, whether you build a life that actually reflects what you believe you deserve. I hadn't been doing that. I'd been building a life that reflected what I thought I owed everyone else. I'm 32 years old and I'm starting over in some real ways. I have a father I'm slowly getting to know. I have a cardiologist I see every 3 months. I eat dinner at my own table most nights without my phone in my hand, and the quiet has stopped feeling like something I need to fill. That's not nothing. In fact, right now it feels like just about everything.